What is Figma, and why is it worth $20 billion to Adobe? This is MacVoices. Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Kolide. Kolide is a fleet visibility solution for Mac, Windows, and Linux that can help you securely scale your business. Learn more at kolide.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, I'm chuckling because we always have an interesting time getting this show off the ground, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, then you are not seeing MacVoices After Dark. But this is MacVoices Live. We do this Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, which is the time it is now where we are. Not sure where it is wherever you are, but we wish you were here with us in YouTube at macvoices.com. Excuse me, youtube.com/MacVoicesTV. Yeah.
Is there an acquisition you want to tell us about, Chuck?
No, not really. Not really. We have a number of things to talk about tonight, one of which I'm going to make the lead story because we've been putting it off for a couple of weeks, and I do think it deserves a little bit of attention. So we'll be leading off with that. But before we do, we're going to welcome everybody into the chat room. Thanks. We've been having some discussions about a bug with Brad, and we have several other people there, and more joining us all the time. So you should be there too. If you're not, get in there. Let's go around the panel and see who's here, and then we'll get to it. First up, in his usual spot on my screen, Mr. David Ginsburg. David, good to see you.
Good to see you, Chuck. Thanks for having me. It's always a blast to be here, and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I am too. Over in well, it's kind of an abnormal spot for him, Mr. Mark Fuccio, with yet another banner announcing something that we probably should need to know about, Mark.
Yes. So today is October 4th, World Animal Day. You know, sort of historically, it's the birth date of St. Francis of Assisi, who was famously known for his preaching to the birds and, consideration of other animals as God's creatures. Somehow the date has been slightly adjusted in name, as have many other holidays. So it's now World Animal Day. St. Francis is the patron saint of San Francisco, which is just a little bit north of where I am. So, that's the significance of October 4th.
Thank you. I feel educated now. I did not know any of that. Don't know what good it's going to do me, but that's okay. I feel educated.
Well, you might win a bar bet somewhere once upon a time, sometime in an airport or something.
Good point.
Or the current Pope's name is also Francis. So there's quite a lot of Franciscan orders and other things out there. But for the purpose of MacVoices, it's World Animal Day. So respect your 2 and 4, or tailed or finned friends, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Got it. Thank you. I'm not sure if he qualifies as a tailed or finned friend, but Jeff Gamet's here.
Do you want to check?
No. No, thank you. Thank you for the offer, though, Jeff.
Sure thing. What's a tail or a fin among friends?
Yeah. It's the best offer I've had all day, actually.
Well, did it just get hot in here?
Next to him, not knowing what to make of this, is Jim Ray. Jim, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. Good to see you.
That's it? You have no other comments on the proceedings there? Okay. You're a smart man. Warren Sklar is here from his basement bunker. Warren, good to see you.
How are you doing? Maybe we're the animals, and we should have a day for ourselves because we're a bunch of animals. And it's anyhow, every day is World Animal Day because I love my dog and she's always here. So good to be here. Today is it's good to be here. I won't be here Thursday, Dave. We talked about that because I'm going to London to see the Giants game in London just for the weekend. So that's going to be fun if they win. Probably not as fun as they lose if they lose.
Great. Well, safe travels before we forget to say it. Last but absolutely not least, here from right back from a safari to the nation's capital, Mr. Web Bixby. Web, it's good to see you. Glad you're back.
Good to see you. Like I mentioned to you privately, I did not find any intelligent life in our nation's capital, and I looked. So sorry about that. So anyway, good to be here.
After my own heart.
Yeah. Well, and as I replied privately to you, maybe we'll have better luck with the Mars rover. So,
maybe.
Let's hope so.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Okay, guys. So I'm throwing some links into the chat room. I already threw it into the private chat room. I just threw it into the public one. This is a story that I know Mark wanted to comment on, and I'm sure Jeff has some thoughts on it. Adobe purchased an entity called Figma for $20 billion. Now, think about that for just a second. $20 billion. And the funny thing is, I don't know how many of us have ever heard of Figma. I really wasn't aware of this company. So, Mark, Jeff, can you fill us a little bit on Figma and why it was worth $20 billion to Adobe?
Yeah,
I bet either of us can.
Jeff,
go for it, Mark.
Oh, okay. I'll go first then. Thank you, Jeff. So, Figma, it was a startup. Sort of interestingly, its founder, remember way back at the start of the teens, Peter Thiel was out there saying, "Oh, college is overrated, and I'll fund anybody who has a great startup idea." Well, one of the founders of Figma did. So he joins a great tradition of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates in having a vision and ability to go from nothing to a successful product. Can't quite say it's a successful company because it's going to be taken out and integrated into Adobe. So what do? They have a tool which, for my way of looking at it, seems like it redefines some existing tools. So it's a combination maybe of Photoshop Lite in terms of photo editing. Plus, it has ability to do diagramming and brainstorming. So it looks like it cuts across the board and redefines a lot of easy to use functionality. It doesn't have lots of inspectors and widgets and adjustment tools like many Adobe apps do. And it seems that it's caught critical mass. Famously, in a lot of the information leading up to why it got acquired, they're talking about their tremendous success at Microsoft, which is sort of a partner for Adobe for some of their cloud-based efforts, I believe, as well as both Shantanu and Satya went to the same colleges back in India. So obviously, I got to believe that they're staying in touch. So this app came out, and it's a subscription model, and it looks like it's doubled from $200 million of revenue last year, with an expectation to close 2022 with $400 million. That's a double. So by itself, that's an interesting business that's growing. I think the thing that probably caught Adobe's interest was potential competition and chiseling away at Photoshop users, because if you look at some of the bundling, Creative Cloud for individuals is about $55. Actually $54.95 last I looked. So it was 5 cents between friends. And Figma, is they have an individual price and they have a corporate price. Their corporate user price is $45, which is $10 below. So not only does it have the ability that it could maybe address a lot of what people's primary needs are, but it's a lower price point. So I suspect that the Adobe CEO and senior management team and board looked at this as a combination of, holy crap, if we do nothing, this is going to hurt us. but also, from a positive point of view, Figma is basically web first. And sort of historically, Adobe has tried to migrate its desktop apps, into cloud versions by offering, database syncing from your desktop up to the cloud to other users and blah, 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 blah. Figma has none of that. And, so it's cloud native and it's up in the cloud. I think another thing about it is that, this potentially adds another tool, with Adobe's marketing muscle that it, really can, grow a lot faster, with Adobe behind it, just because, they have, I've got to believe they have a lot more might and ability to get knowledge of this out into the market than Figma as a startup. Interestingly, the market had a bad reaction. The deal was announced on September 15th. And basically on that day, Adobe's share price dropped about 25% from about $400 to $300. So this is in the middle of all sorts of other market turmoil and indigestion, but Wall Street wasn't impressed. Why, you ask? Well, they're basically paying 50 times what their revenue is. Figma's revenue is going to be for this year. So 400 million, 50x multiple, that gets you to $20 billion. Deal's a combination of cash plus half cash, half stock. So that, again, seems to indicate to me a certain amount of, fear and desperation on the part of Adobe management. From a valuation perspective, SaaS, software as a service companies, they're very high. They're all over the map. There haven't been a lot of other acquisitions. Most of them are successful and able to grow and go public and have, until basically about the past year or 18 months, have had really great performances and track records in the stock market. I would point out that certainly, I think Chuck, you and Jeff might know that there was this company called Frame.io, which was quite the excitement at NAB from around 15, 16, 17, because it was basically offering video editing in the cloud. And it grew, and Adobe bought them. Deal closed in 2021. There isn't as much information about that deal that was made public, but the best information I could find indicates that they were about $20 million, for a $1.3 billion acquisition price. If I do my math correctly, that comes out to be about 65 times revenue. So 50 times revenue is a lot, but it's certainly not a high water setting mark. So I think this is a combination that is could potentially be win-win-win for everybody. A win for Adobe's customers, a win for the company that can have much broader muscle to get its product into the marketplace, and it's certainly a win for the investors and the employees at Figma as a company. So, the way I look at it is maybe motivated by a little bit of fear, but I think it's a positive deal.
I think some Figma customers are wondering if it's a win for them.
Well, it all depends on how much what Adobe wants to do, and do they start to jack up their subscription prices like they have for the Creative Cloud,
and screw up the product.
Well, that's a possibility, but I think it's probably independent. So I'd be more worried about pricing. I'd be more worried about new millionaires deciding to abandon and jump ship. And I think that might cause, delays in products and things, but I don't think that would be something intentional that Adobe would inflict on it.
To be fair, my perception of companies that Adobe has acquired, like Frame.io, they keep their hands off the core stuff. I mean, they might start requiring things like using Adobe's cloud services for storage, but for the most part, they've been pretty good, I think, about not screwing up the products themselves for the most part. Jeff,
oh my God! We just spent $20 billion on this thing. Let's f it up. I'm sorry. Let's screw it up. I mean,
that's Microsoft's MO.
Glad I didn't say that, Jeff. No, I agree. Jeff, what's your take on this?
Mark and I are in alignment on some parts of this, and I have a different perspective on some parts as well, which is good because that means that people now have more stuff they get to think about. Okay, so to build on Mark's description of Figma, Figma is a cloud-based project collaboration tool with some design elements built into it as well. So you can use it for just straight project collaboration or design collaboration as well. And that's where the lightweight Photoshop like features and InDesign features come in. So it works with other applications as well, and where Figma, I think, initially started to gain users was when people that don't like Adobe or can't afford Adobe decided that this looked like a nice alternative to Adobe XD, which is Adobe's existing project collaboration and design collaboration platform. So they could get into Figma for a lower price, stay out of the Adobe ecosystem, and that, I think, was a big part of Figma's growth. Another part of that is it's actually a really good product. So so that helps too. I think what Adobe was looking at when they started looking at acquiring Figma, which, by the way, this deal is not done yet. It's announced, but it has to go through all the regulatory hurdles. So it'd be more accurate to say Adobe and Figma have agreed to a purchase. Adobe has not yet completed the purchase.
They've got engaged, but they're not married.
Oh yeah. They're definitely engaged. So I think what Adobe saw with Figma was a platform that's a competitor to Adobe XD, but also a platform that improves on some things that Adobe XD is trying to do. So by getting this deal to come together, what Adobe gets is a product package that they can now integrate into Adobe XD. And my Jedi instincts are telling me that instead of going the Frame.io route, where Adobe was looking for a cloud-based video editing solution, what they're looking for here is this whole system where they can start pulling it apart and making it part of Adobe XD. And so, Jim, to play off of what you were saying, there's already a lot of really pissed off Figma users, and it's only going to get worse because they're already feeling betrayed. And if Adobe does with this what I'm expecting, then they're going to feel betrayed, and then they're also going to be really, really pissed off because now they can't even pretend to not be in the Adobe ecosystem because the tools they're using are part of a product that has Adobe in the name. And I expect that there's a percentage of Figma users that will abandon ship and look for some other similar platform, but they won't be as happy with it because it's not Figma. As far as the money goes, holy crap, that's a lot of money. But if you look at it as an asset and talent investment, considering this is the kind of tool that Adobe promotes for businesses, like if you're a design agency, an advertising agency, marketing agency, and you're collaborating on large projects, then this is a tool that can be really useful because you can have people wherever they are, as opposed to all in the same building, and everyone can work on the project with the permissions that you give them for each part, and you can keep all of the assets for that project, including everything you need to keep track of project milestones, all of that. in one place. And wow, and now you have the resources that make up Figma to put into that as well. That will make it Adobe XD look a lot more compelling to even more companies.
Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Kolide. Kolide is a fleet visibility solution for Mac, Windows, and Linux that can help you securely scale your business. The challenge with endpoint security has always been that it's difficult to scale, and when remote work took over, that challenge got exponentially harder. You need visibility into your fleet of devices in order to meet security goals and reduce service desk tickets. But how do you get that visibility when different parts of your company run on Mac, Windows, and Linux? You get Kolide. Kolide is an endpoint security solution that gives IT teams a single dashboard for all devices, regardless of their operating system. Kolide gives you real-time access to your fleet's data and can do things that traditional MDMs can't. And instead of installing intrusive agents or locking down devices, Kolide takes a user-focused approach that communicates security recommendations to your employees directly on Slack. You can answer every question you have about your fleet without intruding on your workforce. Visit kolide.com/MacVoices to find out how. If you follow that link, they'll hook you up with a goodie bag just for activating a free trial. That's Kolide, KOLIDE.com/MacVoices. Again, Kolide.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Kolide for their support of MacVoices.
Well, I would look at it. I agree that this adds a lot of value to Adobe. I'm not sure if they need to try to shoehorn this into XD and piss off all the Figma user base. They could offer this, pick another, combination of, Adobe FM, and it becomes a new product, and it could be priced differently because its functionality is an interesting blend of Photoshop, InDesign, XD. That they could offer.
Well,
this
you're describing Adobe
product.
XD.
Well, yeah, but from some of the other users, I understand Adobe's putting a lot of weight into it, but it just doesn't seem to be gaining a lot of traction. So
yes.
So let's table that. Certainly Figma, given that they've had a number of years of revenue doubles, it seems like they are getting market traction. And again, Adobe, if they want to look at it in their way of the world, they could snuff this thing out. If they realize that this thing that they paid $20 billion for actually is a different type of app, give it a separate space on, their chart of the Adobe Creative Cloud, and then offer it. And to the extent that I think its team collaboration features are really, really valuable, let's hypothetically, we talk about a Figma, Figma and a Figma Pro. Put all the collaboration in the Figma Pro, and then charge the hell out of corporations, but can keep the relatively low price that they have for individual users. I think maybe, if I had Santanu's job, that's the way I would direct the team to think about this thing, because just trying to squelch it and extinguish it and try to protect and limit competition, against my existing suite of apps, I think users won't see for that. And I think
I don't think Adobe's looking at it as something where they can acquire and destroy. I think this is acquire and fix XD, and I think that the product similarities are too great to have XD and Figma, or like Figma and Figma Lite, because it's just too similar. And then if you start taking out like the collaboration element, then it's no longer the product. It's it doesn't have the value anymore. And that's why I think that what Adobe's going to do with this, instead of extinguish it or let it sit as its own brand, is they're going to take everything that they can that makes Figma good and roll that into XD. And It'll be interesting to see if they do that and if it's successful, because like I said, a large part of Figma's success comes from the fact that they're not Adobe.
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying. It's just we're gazing at tea leaves and crystal balls. So enough speculation. Let's meet and revisit this topic in a year or 18 months and see what happens. Let alone, I want to go back to one of your points. It is not a certainty that this is a done deal. The Justice Department, under Biden seems to be wanting to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of, antitrust prohibition of acquisitions. So, again, I think the fact that you go to a lot of the Figma site and directly they are taking pot shots directly at Adobe. I've got to believe. Unintelligent life inside the Beltway would look at that and think these guys are competitors. We can't let Adobe acquire a competitor. So, but again, that's pure speculation. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think the rest of the panel does. And then we'll just have to see how this plays out. Get your popcorn and let's do periodic updates.
Isn't speculation what this panel does?
I have no problem speculating.
Yeah, really.
I have no problem talking about what I don't even know.
So Jim, I'm sure you're familiar with the physicist Bourne. His quote is, "Predicting is difficult, especially of the future."
I think you mean Bohr.
I really appreciate the discussion, because when I saw this, it's like 20 billion.
Yeah.
I mean, and there are a couple things that and please correct me if my impressions are wrong. But first of all, there are an awful lot of really, really good Photoshop competitors out there that are good for, I'm going to say 90 to 95% of the audience. They're not Photoshop, but they're close. And so you have that small subset of features that is Photoshop specific that really, the real professionals need. I
think you should take Photoshop out of don't use that word. I don't see this as having much of anything to do with Photoshop. This is a design tool. And the collaboration is really, that's the key to it, why people are liking it. As Jeff said, people are it enables design to be done on teams that are, especially the pandemic happening, I'm sure just gave it a huge boost. And, when you started off, Chuck, saying Adobe bought this entity, and I was like, what? I mean, Figma is like, they're the new hotness, and they've just taken off. They've killed Sketch, basically. So, this is not like some, Photoshop clone. That's not what this is. And it runs in a web browser. So there's not even any app at all. And there's no documents, so we could all sit here and fiddle on a document right here on this call. With not, we're not emailing files back and forth. And I think, that the whole thing about individual users, who cares? That's not really Figma's story. Figma's story is teams and collaboration. And, I don't think individual users are a significant part of, it's sort of like, we're going to, Slack saying we're going to concentrate on individuals. Slack is for teams. An individual doesn't buy it. And same thing for Figma. It's a collaboration tool for companies, and that's what it's all about. And it's not really a bitmap. The biggest thing is Bezier curves and doing a lot of UI design is being done with it and stuff like that. It's not a Photoshop do things with images. For one thing, because it's an online tool, and that doesn't really work so well. Not that it doesn't, but that's not the concentration of it. It's mostly doing things like UI design and advertising design, stuff like that.
Okay, so go ahead, Mark. I'll let you answer.
I was going to say to Jim, don't don't be too soon to discount their two-tier pricing, because a lot of individuals use it and then they like it, and that's how it gets introduced into corporate environments. So I think that's a deliberate part of their marketing strategy. There's been many other customers out there of all sorts of other tools where they get their start by users bringing them in and saying, "Oh, I have this thing; it's really great. Why aren't we using this at our XYZ, startup or medium size or behemoth company?" So I think that's part of it, and I think that's part of the reason for their very rapid growth. And then, sort of from a corporate sales perspective, is once they see a lot of people are using it and maybe they're registering it with their corporate email address instead, then basically they go out and instead of buying them this way, let's get a corporate deal, and then you get all sorts of other things, and then corporate deals for a large number of users, whatever the list price is on the website, all of a sudden just goes out the window. But without knowing anything in specific detail about their sales strategy, their reported revenue growth is impressive, and I think it's a combination of both individuals glomming onto it and then companies glomming onto it.
Webb, you want to get in this?
Oh, I was just and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. $20 billion, 50 times annual recurring revenue. They're doing about $400 million a year. Is that how I calculated?
That's what they're expected to do this year, 2022.
That's just a lot. It's interesting to me that like we all said, 50 times revenue seems to be a lot. It's impressive. Would love to have been in the room when they were talking what that acquisition was going to be, coming down to what the money was going to be. That would have been fascinating to listen to. But it's Adobe has some smart people, and same with Figma too. But I'm going to go under the assumption they know what they're doing. But it's a $20 billion is a big number to try to swallow. So anyway, that's all.
Right. And also Adobe was one of the, if you look at over the past decade, it was one of the really successful, if not the poster child for a company migrating from selling licenses to SaaS, software as a service, a subscription recurring revenue model. And, its stock went from, down in the 20s or 30s, as I said, all the way up to $700. So they've been very successful at that. And markets change, and maybe they had their own products for this. Like Jeff was saying, they have XD, but for whatever reason that didn't take off, and maybe that's a Adobe product development culture issue. Maybe there's a lot of pissed off anti-Adobe users out there who are just trying to find as many other things as they can. But that's sort of looking in the rearview mirror. We'll have to see what happens going forward. And again, back to whether this deal even does consummate and close.
Well, Jeff, let me throw this in and then go. But what I think what I'm hearing, to try to boil it down, is we got a collaboration platform that it potentially improves something we already had. We are buying a customer base and therefore a revenue base. And what else? And we are sorry to the antitrust people, but we are taking out a potential competitor, when they're small enough to take out.
Right. And I would point out again, just, I went and looked at some of Adobe's, 10K and 10Q reports. And I forget if this was in the 10K or 10K annual or 10Q when they're quarterly reports, but, it was certainly from the March quarter that I saw this reported, where they said that year over year they had increased ARR, annual recurring revenue, by $429 million. Well, that's what this little startup has. So if Adobe on their entire creative suite, Creative Cloud, is only able to do this, it indicates that, they're starting to saturate their market. And to whatever extent, people believe and agree or disagree about the stock market, anticipating and looking forward, Adobe stock basically peaked, last year in Q4, and it's been in a downward trend ever since then. So I've seen this before in many stocks where they look really well, but they start to go down. The analysts, at some of these big funds and things, that hire a lot of smart, insightful people, and they can see and anticipate sometimes, problems when they're coming up. So again, that's why I think that this was catalyzed at Adobe, maybe at some element of fear. I don't know. Is it 10% fear or 30% fear or 90% fear? I don't know, but certainly fear about losing customers to Figma, a startup, a competitor company, was one of the elements in their deciding to make this acquisition and paying a very rich valuation for it.
This MacVoices Live panel is back next time to finish up our conversation about Figma and Adobe and what it might mean for the future of graphics and design collaboration. Then we turn our attention to the latest in the Elon Musk Twitter saga. It seems like it never ends. That's all next time on MacVoices. I hope you'll join us. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.